right, welcome to Make More Music, the podcast that connects you to music and one another. My name's Chris, and I'm a board-certified music therapist. If you're new here, I interview music professionals from a variety of career paths to show you how you can make a life and a living in a music-related field. And today, I've got an awesome interview with William Kurk. William Kurk Enterprises, the pianist. I first heard of him on Reverb's videos, their YouTube series, Synth Sounds of, where I just thought the way he talked was hilarious. I loved the deep dive into different synthesizers, and I learned a whole lot. So he talks about how he worked through that process, how it's evolved, and how he was like, I wasn't even that big into synths when I started, but he's cultivated this passion for that. He's a pianist. He is a songwriter and just an awesome guy. We go really down in the weeds and all kinds of random topics, talking about everything from Welch's fruit snacks to the new Pringles flavors, and how he's responded to the coronavirus pandemic. Because yes, this is still yet another episode in our social distance suite. So hope you enjoy this chat with William Kurk on Make More Music. Let's get this thing started. William, I'm so glad to have you here. I've been following the Synth Sounds of. That's how I first saw you, was all the Reverb content and stuff like that. And now I've fallen down the rabbit hole. I've listened to your music. I was jamming the other day with my daughter, making breakfast on Sunday. We're doing church from home, obviously. So I was like, well, I'll put on this album. We can cook our breakfast. This also counts for church right now. So, So before we get into everything that you do and your history, I was reading your bio and I was fascinated about the Thomas Dorsey relation and all that. Let's do some rapid fire though. You ready?
Oh, sure.
All right. I want you to open up whether it's your phone or whatever. What's the last track you played on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever?
The last track that's literally on pause is Carole King, You've Got a Friend. Literally.
Oh, nice.
I dive in all types of corners of music. And so there are a lot of people who, they know me from the Reverb thing. And I'm very gracious for Reverb for allowing me to do that and be a part of that. And so with that, there are different corners of my musicality that obviously I don't get to explore doing that series because it's all synth based. But I like to listen to a lot of singer-songwriter music. Obviously, I listen to all of it. So I know people say, well, what is all? Do you listen to country, western, and all that? I mean, I listen to all of it. So if it sounds cool and interesting, I'm on it. And Carole King is just one of my favorites, just in terms of her style and her writing creativity and her musicianship. I just love Carole King. So that's the last thing I was listening to.
Yeah, she was cracking me up on my wife really likes that Gilmore Girls show, and her cameos in Gilmore Girls are hysterical because she does the intro song for that.
Yeah.
And she does a couple of cameos in the show. She's like a music teacher in one of the episodes, and I was like, look at you. That's great. All right, next one. You can take it as matter of fact, as philosophical, and you can be as generic or specific. But if you were an instrument, what would you be and why?
If I were an instrument, that is unlike any other question I've ever heard in my life. I think I should know what instrument I should be. Oh, I got it. A trumpet.
Okay. Why so?
Trumpet. I mean, now, just a little flash backstory. Now, when I was in 6th grade, I played trumpet for a year. I played it, I don't know, because I thought the trumpet was like the most important instrument in life to me at that time, until I took a few days off and I went back to band practice, and it was like I forgot how to play the trumpet. And it's an instrument you have to play every day. You can't just,
the lips are unforgiving, man.
Unforgiving. The muscles have to develop at that young age. And you also, I mean, if you get older and you play it for 20 years, you take a few days off. That's one thing, but you're learning. You have to keep playing it, and I just think the trumpet is such a regal, diverse instrument. Like you can hear it performed in an orchestral setting, and it sounds really prominent and bold. But then you can hear it in a jazz setting, and it sounds uniquely aggressive but sweet. It's an interesting instrument. I feel like
Mm.
in terms of my personality, I might be a trumpet. I'm trying to keep the mute, the horn, the cup mute on my life as much as possible. But sometimes I feel
I
like,
love that.
I feel like I'm some days I'm Arturo Sandoval, some days I'm you know, Chet Baker.
There you go. The extremes. I love it. Trumpet was my first sixth grade instrument as well. So I
Wow.
know, a lot of people though, a lot of people have said trumpet or piano. Most people, those are kind of the first, I would say, on average, the people I've chatted with, which is funny. But yeah, I did the trumpet thing all through high school, and I picked it up again, like as a, like at Christmas or something. I picked it up and played it, and like 10 minutes later, it was like I'd been punched in the mouth. Like couldn't do it. So
Wow. Yeah. It's
you
it's
really,
real. It's a
yeah.
serious instrument, and I marvel at anybody that works on the trumpet for a living. Like it's an instrument where I go, wow, man, if I fell out of bed and fell on my face, that's it. I couldn't
Mm,
play for, I don't know, a week or two
yeah.
weeks or whatever. But I also think it's funny that, me being a piano player, keyboardist, I don't think I would be the instrument that I play.
Mm,
It's funny because most people would say, well, when you want to be a piano, I'm like, a piano is I don't know. I feel like piano instruments are too ominous to be embodied as one single thing.
I
Like
feel you.
a trumpet at least is a horn instrument, and it represents itself like a voice, like a single entity, like the body of it, the way it's constructed. It's like you can look at the trumpet and you can see like anatomy, at least for me. For the piano,
Yeah.
it's like, it's just it's too undiscernible
Yeah.
to
Especially when
personify.
you get down into your level of getting into the synth world too. Then it's like, what is it? Yeah. And it can be a trumpet, so which is
Yeah.
crazy. All right, this might be a left turn, but can be anything, doesn't have to be music related. But what's something that's been inspiring you recently?
Something that's inspired me recently. This is going to be as left cornered as possible. And
Great.
I don't want to get too deep in it, but um every evening it's like I have a routine now, and I've finally developed something that works best for, trying to keep up with the days of the week. And so every evening around 7 or 8 o'clock, um, I'm watching Star Trek. And Star Trek for me, obviously, because there's a play on my name, people will, hey, William Kurk, it's Captain Kirk, blah, blah, blah. But for years growing up, I didn't watch Star Trek. I
Mm,
wasn't a Trekkie. So I started to get into Star Trek like after college. And I got busy with gigs, and so I never really got to catch up on all of the episodes and watch it in sequence. But now I think Star Trek is that thing. Star Trek just teaches so much about diplomacy, about politics, about cultural differences, and how to solve a problem in less than an hour that could literally kill everybody on the ship. Like it's amazing how in some cases they have to resort to force, in some cases they talk their way out of it, or some cases they, you know, it's coming up with various ways to solve a problem. And that's what inspires me. It's very geeky, but it's the truth. I watch Star
So,
Trek and I'm like, I need to be able to like think
mm,
beyond my present situations or just think like in a different realm of life. Like even down to like creating music.
mm,
I feel like what would they listen to on the Starship Enterprise? What kind of music besides that? They always play like the public domain stuff, which I theorize is why they always listen to classical music because they're
mm.
like, we can't, they can't
Hundreds of
bust
years
out.
old. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they can't bust out with you know, Poison's greatest hits.
yeah,
Like imagine the bridge. Somebody listens to Poison. That to me is just funny. Like that's like
yeah.
the whole idea of like they also value music so much on the show. So particularly on the Next Generation and Voyager, there are so many music related moments that I mean they value culture. So that's the short answer of it. It can get more geeky, but that is the short part of it.
So I always grew up. I never have gotten into Star Trek. I was hardcore into like Star Wars, and then got into like Lord of the Rings and that kind of stuff. But where would you tell somebody who's never watched any Star Trek to start? Which series? Things like that.
Obviously, to quote Wayne's World, where they say the Next Generation is supposed to be the more superior, but the original is the more revered. Um, I would say personally, the Next Generation.
Okay.
And there might be people that will say, hardcore Trekkies might say, well, you got to start the original because you got to get the Captain Kirk, Spock, you know, that whole thing, and then you got to work into the Next Generation. Honestly, the Next Generation for me is the era I grew up in, um,
Mm,
and it just reson. It's such a show where you don't have to watch the original to get the Next Generation. It's not
mm.
one of those things where like, oh, you didn't see um, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, so you're gonna be lost on
Dude,
you
yeah, that
know
is
Civil
exhausting.
War.
Yeah.
You know, it's a standalone show, so you can start with the Next Generation, and the Next Generation is long enough to where if you get to like season 5 and stuff, I mean, you're deep, you're in the rabbit hole, and you can get
Love it.
everything that you need to know about Star Trek in the first 2 seasons. If you watch the first 2 seasons, you'll get the cultures, you get like the relationships between the people on deck. It's very easy to follow too. It won't derail people into this, deep ended soap opera of sorts. But yeah, the Next Generation.
Good. Okay. Well, it is in the middle of all this quarantine, so why not go ahead and watch 5 seasons of Star Trek, right?
Yes, YOLO.
Yeah, why not? This is probably another left turn. Doesn't have to be music related at all, but what's a pro tip or a hack or something that you do that you feel like other people should know about that would just make their life a little bit easier?
A pro tip, a life pro tip. Hmm, this is interesting because while there are various pro tips I might have about music and um, life, I don't know which one would be the most. I would go with a life pro tip, and then I'll do a short music pro tip.
All right,
So
let's hear them.
a quick life pro tip would be drink water
Mm,
every single day. And I'll say that because um, in time, just because of how life is, we keep progressing in time forwardly in life and yada yada yada. And so, like most of us, we have our journeys of diet and lifestyle where we eat a certain way, and then maybe it catches up to us by adding on pounds or adding on calories and or just health in general. And honestly, I'm very fortunate to say that while I've splurged my life away on all types of delectable foods, I haven't hit a hardcore like wall where um, I've lost control of myself physically.
Mm.
However, I notice there's a difference when water is part of my daily consumption, especially for me as a vocalist. Like when I'm not playing, I'm also a singer. So um, I was very bad at self care. Um, and and I know a lot of people nowadays, like they either drink all water or they don't drink any water, and they're like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
water is horrible, it's nasty, blah blah blah." But one life hack that I've learned to do is if you don't drink water, then you can eat water. You can, a watermelon,
Mm.
cucumbers. Those are my two go-to fruits, or vegetable. Where actually cucumber is a fruit. So those are my two go-tos where I'll get water intake by eating it, and then I always say if you hate water, you want to get into water consumption, um, get like the very very small bottles that you see at the supermarket, like the little
Yeah.
tiny 8-ounce ones, and then get an actual large container, like the 2 gallon of whatever water you want to get, whatever brand or whatever, and then just keep refilling the little tiny 8 ounces ones. Like you're gonna just guzzle the 8 ounces. So, and you're gonna get into a rhythm of learning how to drink water, and that's a really random life hack that
The simple ones are the best ones, man. It's most people are brought up, use your calendar, make a to-do list, drink water. It's all the things that you're supposed to do. It's just, how do you do it? And if you have to start with watermelons or cucumbers, if the 8-ounce bottles, whatever, you got to do what you got to do, right?
yeah, and I mean you got to graduate your way into being a habitual water drinker, and it makes a difference for me as a not just as a musician, as a performing artist, but health wise it's been a dramatic difference. And I don't want to get too deep on the science of it, but that's it. That's my life hack is drink more water. And then on the music side, there are a lot of people that they inquire about lessons. They want to get into playing piano or singing or something musical, or they just want to learn about music.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things for me that I was fortunate enough to grow up with was not just a family that did music and I was always surrounded by it, but I was able to absorb it and really appreciate all the types of music. And so when people say I want to learn how to play piano, I want to learn how to, you know, sing this song, the first thing that I do in assessing what I should do in terms of teaching them um is your goal to be able to play your favorite song. Like if you have a favorite song, doesn't matter if it's um Justin Timberlake Cry Me a River or if it's I don't know,
Take
Metallica
five.
Sad But True,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever the
yeah.
song is. I said if you want to learn how to really play music and have it in you, you use your favorite song or your favorite songs to you try to convert your interpretation of those songs through the instrument. That way you can
Mm,
really learn because there's no other song that you know best than the songs that are your favorite
that's true.
because you'll know it because you listen to it all the time. So, in the case of like piano lessons or something to that effect, depending on the age and the levels, of course, and the song, like, like a 5-year-old that likes Bohemian Rhapsody is probably not gonna jump
It's
there,
gonna be a
but
little tough. Yeah, yeah.
it's gonna be a little tough. But if they like Baby Shark, you know, then they know that. They know like a kid will know Baby Shark, um, an adult might know, you know,
You've got a
Thriller,
friend. Yeah, Thriller.
or You
Yeah.
Got a Friend, or yeah. So I will teach them based on I would teach like basic things, of course, basic structure, but then eventually tease them by performing a very simplified version of that song and say, you keep practicing, you can get there. So it almost accelerates the learning process instead of having to go through like, essential elements books and then like, here's
Yeah.
little C and every good boy does fine, blah, 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 which is all important, but I'm also teaching how to feel and translate music. So that's a life hack where you want to learn how to play an instrument. Use your favorite song
Yeah.
as a tool or as a motivator, as a motivation. Blah, blah.
Because
Let
that's
me
what
go
you
back.
want to play. Yeah, you
Yeah,
want to play what you like. Yeah.
yeah. Use your favorite song as a motivating tool. That's what I was trying to say. That.
Yeah, I got you. I got
So
you.
yeah, yep.
All right, another left turn. We got two more, I think. What you just talked about drinking water, some healthy changes. I want to know what's your go-to junk food.
Go to junk food. Oh boy. This could be a rabbit hole. This could be
That's okay. That's what a podcast is for, right?
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, excellent. Then let us indulge the rabbit hole. Um, well, recently I discovered this Pringles flavor. It's
Mm.
um, it's a flavor that I cannot just eat a few of these chips and put it down. Like I have to eat the whole container, and this is
That's how it
this is
goes.
a problem. I like Pringles in general. I like the original. I like the pizza flavored, but
I love the pizza. Love the pizza.
I mean, it's just a party. It's instant party.
Yeah.
I can't stop eating the pizza Pringles. But that's not the one I was talking
All right,
about.
let's
The
hear
one that
this
I'm
new one.
talking about is the lime and chili Pringles.
Oh, okay.
I mean, first of all, let me just say I only got these Pringles because these were the only Pringles left on the shelf during
It's
quarantine.
coronavirus. Yeah.
So I was like, fine. It was like two left. I got them both. I think I ate both of them in a day. And that's when I knew I probably need to not buy them as hardcore as I've been buying them. Um, Lime and chili Pringles have been like the new. It's like the new UFC champion of junk food right now. Like it came out of nowhere.
Dark
Nobody
horse.
knew
Yeah.
its backstory. Nobody knew, who it trained with. Nobody knew its martial arts styles. This thing just came out of nowhere, and
Just showed up.
it just showed up and put me in the chokehold, and that's it. You know. But
There
then,
you go.
a close second. Should I say no? I'm not gonna say close second. I'm gonna say the original number one.
Okay, all right.
The the co-champion. Fine, we're gonna make up a new order of rule in terms
Yeah,
of
it's like different, you got your bantamweight and your heavyweight, these are just different belts.
yeah, Intercontinental champion,
Yeah, yeah.
North American champion.
WCW, WWF, what is it?
Of course, yeah, yeah, that stuff. But Welch's fruit snacks, probably
Mm,
the all-time champion junk food for
all
me.
right.
It's the all-time champion. The Welch's fruit snacks. It doesn't matter which flavor you get. The mixed fruit is the most revered. That's like
Mm.
the greatest hits of
That's
all.
my daughter's current. We have a Costco size one of those, so it's
Yeah,
like
that's.
she'll just slam like 3 of those at a time.
I mean, man, and that's conservative for me. Like 3, I'm down in 8.
Well, she's 2 going
Oh,
on
that's
3.
good. That's good. Moderation.
Yeah,
Moderation.
yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend 8 for a 2-year-old. That's overkill. That might stunt some growth. I don't know. I'm not
Who knows? We can
saying
neither confirm nor deny.
exactly. Dad, why am I 49 and I'm 28?
It's like it's
And
the
I ate the
Welch's.
fruit snacks.
Welch's, babe. Yeah.
Exactly. You ate 9 of them instead of 2. I meant
Yeah.
to tell you. Sorry.
Yeah. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Well, good. Well, lastly, before we get into all your background, with all the stuff that's going on right now, who is a person, a project, or an organization that you feel like is doing great work, deserves a shout out?
Shout out to 3arts.org, which is an
Okay.
organization based in Chicago, and they essentially deal with artist relations, and they give artist awards and grants. They've done a great deal of work because while this entire situation is played out with, how our art is going to get any level of support,
Mm.
in terms of just being able to pay some bills and take care of some life necessities. um 3arts is one of the organizations that I actually applied for a grant for a stimulus, and they came through, and
Wow.
they they've done that for many other artists as well, but um they definitely came through for me, and it's been a blessing. So there's no telling how long this will go. I mean, it is what it is, so I'm not gonna fret over it. I'm not gonna worry about it. But
That's great.
yeah, 3arts in Chicago. That's
Is
my
it
shout out.
is it
3arts.org for sure.
for Illinois or Chicago area, or where do they support?
Chicago,
Okay.
and Chicagoland areas. So that includes, the areas surrounding Chicago. Um, but they primarily, give attention and focus to artists out of the Chicago scene, and they're very diverse with their artist appreciation. So they do fine
Great.
art, dance, music, um, and all of the other various arts, that could even be, related in art forms or whatever. So yeah, 3arts, and that's my shout out. They came through for me, and um, much love to them because
Yeah,
it's
that's
certainly a
great.
situation out here. So
Yeah, they just launched an organization down here, the Louisville Arts Network, and that's given out a bunch of specifically micro grants to people. So it's like, hey, here's a small grant. It can directly support a project that you can work on right now during all this. So it's just cool to see the creative ways that people are able to keep things going and just a little bit of support and keep the wheels on the bus, you know?
yeah, definitely because I just this is totally random, but this is the news that just broke at the time of this recording. So Los Angeles just got 3 more months of staying home
Oh,
quarantine.
geez.
Los Angeles. And we're talking about a city where people are used to running around with their dogs. Models and actors are out here, trying to keep their physique up, trying to keep their facade up, and in
Whew.
LA is, so meanwhile, us in the Midwest, we just kind of take it, month by month, kind of fill it
Yeah,
out,
for
make
sure.
sure that things are ultimately safe in the long run. But you know, even if it is 3 months in the Midwest here in Chicago or whatever, for them to say 3 months outright, I mean, it
It's
has
pretty bold. Yeah.
it's a little bold in America. I mean, I'll probably, if I'm in LA, I'm probably feeling some kind of way right now, but like I said, it is what it is. Like, um,
Especially the stereotype. It's not like you don't think LA and think patient for the people
exactly,
in LA as well.
exactly. So much of the universe that we see is turning from LA, in terms of Hollywood, in terms of show business and
Oh, yeah.
entertainment. So that's like a dramatic chokehold on everything. That puts a chokehold on
Especially
so
the
much.
whole yeah, the past decades, like you were saying. I mean, things have been moving to Atlanta and, a whole bunch of the movie industry is moving, the music industry is getting more spread out. So I feel like that's going to be pretty devastating for LA in the long run.
Yeah, we might have a one of those Escape from LA Pliskin
That's it.
futures, like what's Terminator, like
Yeah.
which was set in LA. So I mean, this is
They're
pretty
going to
much
be
we're
getting out
living
of
the
there.
prequel.
Yeah.
We're in
Oh,
the prequel days of Skynet and the zombie apocalypse. It's probably going to happen at this
you
point.
know, it's very likely, I would say now. I mean, there are no bets are off, I think for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
yeah, that's all.
let's go back to you then. Since I read your bio, I didn't know that you had this big old lineage too, going back to even Thomas Dorsey. I mean, I, as a music therapist, have literally used Precious Lord so much in my work, especially with older adults and in hospice care and different things like that. So it's crazy to hear this lineage that you have. I want you to take me back to when you were young. What were some of your first musical memories, and what was growing up and becoming a musician like for you?
Wow. Well, I will start as early as I can remember. Before when I was like a tyke,
Yep.
um, my mom would always say that I would I would learn how to work the tape player as early as 1 years old.
Nice.
And my father was a drummer, and so he had drums set up in the crib. So apparently, I would go operate the tape player, put on Chuck Mangione, Feel So Good, and I would play along on the drums to Feel So Good. Now, I don't obviously remember that, but I do remember, in terms of my earliest memory, I do remember crawling up to a tape deck player. And I do remember this tape player. It's, we're talking like early 80s.
Mm,
You know, one of those solid state,
yeah,
aluminum super deck tape players. They didn't make them small back then at that
nope,
point.
and
Um,
they cost a ton. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you had to buy the entertainment system to have it.
Yeah.
So you had to buy the vinyl, the 8-track player, the radio, and the tape deck, and that was like a full out system. Like there was no such thing as I'm just gonna go get a tape deck and maybe add it to my system. I mean, you could, but for people
That
that
was
were,
not common. Yeah.
it wasn't common. Yeah, it was like if you're gonna go to our electronic store or furniture store, they would have this all at one component. So like that's what made it so common to have. Everybody had the vinyl player, the entertainment system. But that was my earliest memory. Playing drums to Chuck Mangione, "Feel So Good," which technically might have been the first song that I've probably ever played, which
Sweet.
is funny because you know, it's such a song that defines an era and
Mhm.
defines a genre. Um, you don't hear any kind of music nowadays done that way. I mean, of course, there's smooth jazz, which technically that music was a predecessor to the radio term, which is called smooth jazz,
Mhm.
and which is now widely known as contemporary jazz. Um, but yeah, that was my first memory, and then um, later down the line, I played flute in fourth grade, and I studied with this woman. I cannot remember this woman's name. It's like of all the things in my life where I usually can remember the teachers' names or certain people. I can't remember this woman's name, but I'm sure, like, if I dig like really deep enough into like the Merit School of Music's archives back in like
Yeah.
1989 or 90, I can find it. But um, anyway, yeah, I played flute, and then And then after that, I jumped to trumpet. And that's when the trumpet thing happened for a while.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I don't like this. And so next instrument. Um, and in between that, actually, in between that, like guitar was in the middle of that somewhere. Um, between, I don't know, ages 8 and 10. But I took a few lessons and, didn't really stick. I didn't really like the guitar for some reason, so whatever. And then um bass happened almost out coming out of grade school. I actually liked the bass, but I just wasn't into it at the time. So I just played it a little bit and then just whatever, put it to the side. But then I didn't really get serious about music, honestly, until 13. And my grandma, who was the pastor of the church, um, technically still is the pastor. She's just not the acting pastor. Um,
Mhm.
and she's also the minister of music. So she put me in a choir. And it was without warning. I really didn't want to, I didn't express any need to sing or desire to sing, but she just put me in a choir. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, but whatever. But she knew what she was doing because she put me in a choir. I was singing every week. I was in choir rehearsal. And then there were times where I started to have my own ideas about vocal arrangement and harmony. And so I would noodle around on the piano. Now, at this point, I had not touched the piano. The piano was something that was I dodged the piano for all of my life because there's no way. I figured you have to be like 4 or 5 years old to even start the piano.
Yeah, right.
I'm all the way in, you know, I was in high school by the time I got around the piano like serious around
Yoda, too
15.
old for training, yeah.
Yeah, so um I started to, you know, learn little exercises here and there just by doing vocal warm-ups. So that was like my gateway into being comfortable with the piano, but then I got really obsessed with trying to write and arrange my own music. And I couldn't do it at that time because I couldn't translate what was in my head to an
Mhm.
instrument. So when I was doing like talent showcases and performances as a singer, I would have other musicians play the accompaniment for me on a tape. And then that would be like my backing track. And then I get to a point where I got tired of having to rely on them to
Yeah.
play for me by way of a cassette tape. And I'm like, I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure out how to do this. So I would just play every day, like every single day. Um, I would learn um, a Stevie Wonder song. I would learn, um, I don't know, a Steely Dan song. I would just learn different songs. I would just sit down and like focus on this one song. Then I got around to like Thelonious Monk, and that
Mm.
was a whole different rabbit hole for me. I
Yeah.
was like learning Monk. I was learning Horace Silver. I was learning Chick Corea, learning Herbie Hancock, Duke Ellington, um, Cole Porter. The classic songwriters. Rogers and Hammerstein. I was learning all of that stuff. I was learning like all types of stuff. I was just geeking out. I went like on a geek overload. Um, and then that's essentially how I get deep into piano and keyboard, and went to college. Long story short, went to Northern Illinois
Mhm.
because I went there first because my grandmother's student. My grandmother, prominent vocal teacher, educator, composer in her own right. I mean, a legend. Lena McGlynn is a legend. You can look her up online, and there's a whole bunch of stuff about Lena McGlynn, McLin. But anyhow, she has a student who is a prominent baritone vocalist. She wanted me to study with a male vocalist because she had been my vocal teacher, by way of being in her choir and me, her actually teaching me, like her actually
Mhm.
being my actual teacher. She said I needed a male teacher to, help, you know, understand the maturity of a male voice and how to approach male, dynamics and all of that. So she had me study with her student, Robert Sims. I studied with him for a semester at Northern, and then I transferred from Northern to Columbia College, Chicago, so I could pursue my jazz studies thing, which I got a scholarship for. I got a scholarship to study there. I was
Sweet.
studying, doing the jazz thing for a while, and then I got involved with doing musical theater. So I did musical theater while doing that. I eventually kind of got, to a point where like I needed to graduate.
Yeah.
So, not saying I wasn't going to graduate, but I was taking on so much that I was kind of distracting myself from getting the
Getting
credits I
out of there.
needed
Yeah.
to really graduate at a decent period of time. So, um, long story short, I got back on my wagon. I started to focus on composition. So I changed my major from jazz studies performance to composition and graduated from Columbia with that degree. And then I was already working around town doing freelance gigs and gigging and all of that. So, um, I just continued to do it when I graduated college. And that's just sort of the short micro bio. I mean, I did take some turns, but that's the short of it. That's basically where the origin story will
I love it.
punctuate. Cool.
So I'm wondering, since you grew up with this awesome family, how much did you recognize at the time that your grandma is such a big deal as she was? At what point did you realize, like, oh wow, I've been pretty blessed with how much music I've grown up around? And then what was the role of that culture of your family and just, the culture of growing up in Chicago and stuff like that that shaped uh, you and the music you make now? What were those early things that have shaped you a lot?
Um, my goodness. I can say when I was, I don't know, as early as I can remember, I knew my grandmother was someone who was special then. I mean, she's iconic now, but she was iconic even 30 plus years ago. And one of the things that she was able to do that no other educator was doing at this time, especially she was teaching high school, but she was able to make these high school chorus, these choirs. She had a choir, and she would get in these chorus competitions and just wipe the floor, just wax the floor with these competitions. Um, she basically was teaching like a collegiate level to high schoolers, and there are plaques and awards
That's
growing
awesome.
up, like all around the crib, like growing up. So it was just like I knew it was real back then. Um, and my mother, she was also in the music industry. She was a background vocalist, and she worked also as a bass player. Like that was her thing. Like she played
That's legit.
bass. And my father was a drummer, so um, I mean, I was always around music all the time. I never really was forced into it though. I had a relatively normal childhood by all accounts. Like I wasn't put into like music boot camp and um,
Suzuki lessons and stuff. Yeah.
Suzuki lessons, all of that. No, I didn't experience that hardcore. I mean, I was just around it so much in the house. Um, growing up, um, also my grandma would have choir rehearsal at the crib, and the choir would come by and sing. I mean, this was like I don't know, maybe twice a week
Mm.
at the most. But then it was definitely once a week. But there might be times where maybe a special program's coming up, they'll do it twice a week. I would hear all of this music all the time. And so, I mean, just also listening to the music that my parents listened to and my grandma. Um, that's something that I feel is lost in today's culture. And I'm not one to say that it's happening in every household, but on a wide span, I can I can tell you for sure that it's not happening where, music is being passed down
For sure.
respectively to the next generation in a way that grants the new kids or the new generation the appreciation of the past. Um, and I don't want to get on a soapbox about it, but in terms of me, I was blessed that I was able to be in a household where my father could listen to, a bunch of jazz recordings or some rock stuff, or, my mom was definitely a Prince fanatic at the time. My mom listened to funk. She listened to, you know, whatever was, relevant. She was sort of like the bridge of the pop music at the time. My grandma listened to operas, listened to, just, all types of classical music. So I listened to all of it. I was able to appreciate all of it. And I remember my grandmother would take me to school every morning back when I was a kid, or sometimes my mother would take me to school, and I would listen to whatever they listened to.
Mhm.
And that's how you gain an experience or appreciation of the music. And just for instance, like, um, my mother used to listen to George Benson all the time, and I
Awesome.
just was, listen to, no, not just George Benson. George Benson is like number two. Like, I'm jumping the major one. I'm jumping Luther Vandross. Luther was
There you go.
at the pinnacle of everything relevant at this time. I mean, Luther was as big as, I mean, he was relevant, huge. So I listened to Luther whether I wanted to or not. That was
Yeah,
it. Like,
yeah.
I just listened to Luther. Then George Benson happened, and then honestly, she put me on Arturo Sandoval, like, you know, because Arturo was hot at the time, and she put me on
Yeah.
Arturo. Um, my grandmother, she would have a bunch of records. Back when we talked about this entertainment system in the living room with the vinyl and the tape
Mhm.
deck and all this. I mean, there were records in that vinyl holder right in the middle. Or
Yep.
everybody that grew up in a certain era knows about the vinyl records that sat in the middle of the console. So
Mhm.
you know the records were mixed. Everybody had records in this collection. My grandma, mother, father, and my grandma would have like Carmen, you know, and I'm like, what's this? And I would just play it. Like, this was during the era where, you know, unlike now where you just got iTunes and not iTunes, but Apple Music and, Spotify and whatever, you could just skim something for 5 seconds and go to the next thing. You had to actually sit down and give music a chance back then. That's the big difference
Yeah.
versus then and now. Um, you had to actually put yourself in a space to absorb the music in one area. And
It was an
unless you had
event.
a unless you
Yeah.
had a Walkman, which was really new at that time, but everybody had a vinyl player in their living room. Everybody had that. So that was a way for me to listen to Simon and Garfunkel. What's this? Okay. Or Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston's first album. Oh, what's this?
Mm.
And I remember listening to Whitney Houston's first album, thinking this woman is going to be a legend, and that's
Yep.
literally what I thought at the time I listened to this album. And I mean, we can go into like crate digging stories all day, but in the long story short, is like I basically was able to experience the music that my parents and my grandmother listened to and appreciated, which basically shaped my appreciation. And I mean, my grandmother would eventually go on to teach me. Like I mentioned, she taught me, and And so it was almost like I was learning the musical kung fu that had been passed down to her. And, you know, that's really the Cliff Note version of it. Like
Yeah.
that's how they shaped me, like just being around it. Um, and that's really what it comes down to in any household. Like I would just say that you don't need to be from a musical family, a family of those who play music for a living, but you need to be also you need to be surrounded around people that really appreciate music. And I don't mean, you know, the music that's out now only. No shade on the music that's been out. No shade on the music that's been
Yeah.
released in the last 10 years, but um music is a timeless entity. And one of the things that I notice is that when I'm trying to connect or um make some sort of bond with younger musicians or artists, um it's not as easy to do nowadays because they are they are zoned into the way that we function now, like where everything is like you have to, if it's not relevant, it's not important.
Mm,
And it's not to say that they don't appreciate the stuff that came out before. It just means that, just the wave of technology with social
yeah.
media and, all the ways that you can just sort of touch and go with music. There, it like that music for them, the oldies or classic rock or just pop music from different eras. It doesn't really have relevance to them because they have no way to contextualize it
Hmm.
other than the only cultural phenomenon that's been able to really do it in a really odd and quirky way is Family Guy.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I have a few colleagues that are younger musicians, and they say, "Well, oh, Michael McDonald, just like on Family Guy."
You're
They're
like,
and I'm
what?
like, "Is that your only recollection of Michael McDonald is through Family Guy?" And it's funny because like that is kind of where it's at. Like that's the only it's not the only thing, but it's the only thing on top of my head that I know that's
Yeah.
like bridging the
Or I
the
noticed
worlds.
the biopics, like when I was working at the hospital a year or 2 years ago or whatever, and the Bohemian Rhapsody movie came out. Suddenly, teenagers at the hospital were wanting uh, more Queen songs, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. Cool. The movie is mattering. The movie make is
Yes.
making a difference." And it's true. It's not that there's not an appreciation. It's that there's not an inherent value because it's not the next sparkly thing. And what's funny is that the sparkly thing in front of you may or may not. And when we think about how pop culture, how fast it moves, right? Probably not going to have as much value as this established thing that is in stone, right? In history, like Led
Yep.
Zeppelin, yeah, or whoever. So it's just funny how that all works. And it's weird to think of all those influences because, I grew up in a house that was, my parents were deadheads. Like, I think before I was 5, they estimate I've been to 50 Grateful Dead shows.
Wow.
And yeah, I cried when Jerry Garcia died. I was like 5 years old. So it's just funny because my dad was not a professional musician. He played guitar and kind of sang, but it's just funny that emphasis on, like you said, the family putting value on music and history of music and these people, these artists that make this stuff, right? So
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I will say this is totally in relationship to my current journey as a musician. And I think a lot of musicians and artists can attest to this because when we play weddings or special events or
mm,
even theater, even musical theater or any semblance of theater performance, um, those audiences are usually at the pinnacle of music appreciation. Now, I played with the wedding band for the last 3 years. I've played wedding bands in my life prior for years before, but this recent one that I'm in, Lakeshore Encores, they're my family, and I love them to death, and we have a lot of fun. It's a situation where that got me back into gigging or jobbing, as we say in Chicago, which is playing weddings and stuff. But I mean, in being able to play what we play the new stuff, yes, that works, is fun, but we also play a lot of stuff that you know only true musical individuals, people that appreciate music at a high level, want to hear. And you
Mm.
said Grateful Dead because that triggered something in me. We played a lot of weddings where we played Smoke on a Mountain, and you
Yeah.
know we played some Deadhead classics, and then we'll jump into Billy Joel, which a influence of mine personally. So I love Billy Joel. We play some Billy Joel. We play Elton John. We play, of course, the Beatles. The Beatles is just like pre-installed with every wedding
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
some point. Like,
They've got so
there's
many good love songs too.
yeah, and I mean, at some point, it doesn't matter the ethnicity of the people of the wedding. That's the thing about music. It's like the music has a way of being sentimental to moments and experiences, and so that's the power of music. We played music where we played weddings where you know the bride and groom want to hear Jodeci,
Mm.
and for those who are in that hip, Jodeci's R&B group back from the early '90s. um so I mean, Jodeci, for me personally, I mean, I grew up on Jodeci, but it's
You're
funny
like, all
to be
right,
at a
let's go.
wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be at a wedding and they're like, want to hear Jodeci instead of the Beatles, or in addition to the Beatles, or want to hear David Bowie and Genuine. It's just so funny. It's just so funny. But um, yeah, music appreciation is riding high in the wedding scene and in
There it is.
theaters, because these are people that appreciate live performance and they also appreciate musicianship. So that's why they have bands. That's also why they don't just get a DJ and they just play the electric slide for 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
they have
wobble.
an actual band. So that's you know that's the blessing I've been able to take away from being a part of performing in jobbing situations, and especially when it's fun, when you're around people that you like and you have love for, and you all just kind of share the same headspace for wanting to be the best at what you do. And you know it's like being on the perfect team, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just natural and there's the flow and you can't describe it, but when you're in it, which is good.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I covered most of my personal history in regards to the music influence of my family. But
Cool.
yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit then on kind of the current things you're doing. And I would love to hear a little bit about the backstory and how you got connected with Reverb, because literally me coming to your videos as a kid that grew up mostly playing guitar, it's I think it's driven, and I've seen so much traffic over the past couple of years of synth pedals for guitar, for one. So guitar players being more interested in making different sounds, but then just this popularity of old synth and, Moog. I just downloaded their app not too long ago that they put out for free and
Nice.
things like that. So tell me what does that partnership look like with Reverb? How did it start, and what does that creation process look like for you?
Well, it's actually kind of funny because I think in most situations where me as an artist, like, and I land in a position that I've gotten into with Reverb, it's almost one of those things where Reverb was looking for something and I was looking for something, but I don't think either of us knew exactly what that was. You know what I mean? Like, I was
Mhm.
looking to, curate or maybe contribute to something that is not necessarily going to be as stringent as here's how to play keyboards or here's how to work a synthesizer. But
Mhm.
they were looking for someone who also perhaps had more of a relevancy into the scene of being a working musician while also having their own identity and being able to express themselves in a colorful way, but also be able
Mhm.
to deliver information about the content at hand. So, going back to college, there's a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, Andrew. Andrew at the time was one of the coordinators of content at Reverb, and
Mhm.
um, he reached out to me about the idea of doing something that would become Synth Sounds. And
Mhm.
at the time, I didn't really see what it was. I didn't understand the concept, but I did understand it. Like, basically, I understood that it was going to be about taking certain songs and learning how to build the sound of that song, but I didn't understand how it would ultimately look at the end. Basically, I just
Mhm.
didn't understand the process, and the process at the time was still really fresh. Like, there was no real set way on how to do it. We
Mhm.
all just sort of came along and developed this method over time. So even on the side of Reverb, there was no real firm like outline or script
Yeah.
or anything. All of the early episodes of Synth Sounds were just, all right, we got some information. I'm gonna absorb it. I'm gonna really just try to maintain it, and then I'm gonna just throw it out there. But then over time, by the second season, that's when they started to get more itemized, started to have bullet points or scripts or just sort of functioning things to talk about. And we had a format at that point, so it was easy to reference the earlier episodes and kind of go, all right, let's talk about the artist, a little bit about this, a little bit about the song, a little bit about that, but then focus on how to get the sound of this. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, how it happened. It was just the timing of it. Like, the timing allowed for me to not only put my energy and my interest into it. And I do love it. I do appreciate what Reverb has definitely done in terms of sharing these things, because for me, it's more about preserving a
Mhm.
unique culture of
Yeah.
the music and the technology. That for me is the motivating factor of when I do the synth stuff. Like, quite honestly, if I'm gonna be very candid about things, and this is
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
candid, it's not like, I hate people or this is what it's more like, me as an artist. Like, I've used since when I started recording music back in the early 90s, or just messing around with synths. Because my family, obviously we had instruments around the crib, and one of the instruments that I still have to this very day is a Korg Poly 6,
Mm.
which belonged to my mom. And it needs some work done, but it was the first synthesizer that I technically ever had a chance to actually use, like in terms of a hardcore, you know, professional level synthesizer, not like a Casio.
Mhm.
Um, but my interest with synthesizers kind of grew while doing the synth sounds of. So basically, to say, like, I feel like I am definitely more a piano player.
Cool.
I think in sort of function more comfortably as a pianist
Mm-hmm.
or as a keyboardist. So, I play keyboard instruments, which it might be a Rhodes, might be a Wurlitzer. That's more or less how I think. But then synthesizer is kind of a unique realm in itself because you have to learn how to build sounds. You have to learn how to get around the respective instrument, And so while doing the synth sounds of it almost helped me appreciate synthesizers more. So while a
Totally.
lot of people might think I'm just some synth dude that's like sitting around surrounded by Model D Moogs and um,
Yeah.
surrounded by like, you know, Juno 106s just stacked
Yeah.
up on the wall. It's like, quite frankly, I'm I don't I don't get on the far end of synthesizer geekery when it comes to my own creativity or music. I just do not. Like I'll use software instruments, but I also just use the keyboards that I know I can use. Like I've been using for so long and I know how to get around and make things sound a certain way. Um and so a few of the instruments that I do use that I still use. The Juno Di,
Mm.
which has been out for about, I don't know, 10 plus years now. It's one of the Juno reissues of Roland, and for me, I love that keyboard. It's so easy to use. Like it's very easy to use. You can do sound modification if you want to, but honestly, I just like that board. It just does it for me. And then the XP80, the Roland XP80, which was actually the first professional keyboard that I've ever owned. 'Cause my grandmother bought it for me.
Mm.
Um, this was during a time where I was trying to figure out. I'm like serious about getting into piano, and I'm learning stuff by ear, and I'm learning all these different songs. And so I'm like, I want to be able to make my own tracks and accompany myself. And so my grandmother made the investment. We went to Guitar Center, and at the time, the Ensoniq ASR keyboard was out. Ensoniq was like that was a relevant brand at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy in Guitar Center was like, I like the Ensoniq better. I like this Ensoniq. You should get the Ensoniq. And they were around the same price. The Ensoniq might have been a little less money, like maybe $2,000, not 2000, maybe, yeah, it was around 2000 something. The XP80 might have been like 2200 or
Yeah.
23. And I was like, I gotta get the XP80 because the guys that were making my tracks were using the XP50. The
Mm-hmm.
XP80 had just come out at this time. I was like, my mind was set on XP series, whatever it was. Like if it was going to be a 50 or 80. So I got the 80 and I recorded my whole first album using just the XP80.
Sweet.
Like no lie. Like I tracked everything. Obviously, I mean, I have a horn, I have a few, live performances on there as well. Like I'm playing some guitar and I have you know, sax and trombone on there, but everything else is, generated from the keyboard. So um yeah, I went deep into the rabbit hole and
That's good.
yeah, that's
That's good, man. So, well, as we kind of come towards the end here, what are kind of your current projects? I know we're in the middle of quarantine. You told me, you said, well, I'm digging into practice and I'm writing some music. What do you want people to be on the lookout? Maybe after we're able to all leave our houses again, or maybe even in the near future. What's going on in your world that you're looking forward to?
well, I am currently working on a new creative project, a new album, and it's funny because in my project discography, um, I have I have 3 albums that kind of serve as a trilogy, which
Mm-hmm.
is the Sound volumes 1 through 3, and then I have Pop Fusion and then Super Pop Fusion, and then I have Legacy, and then I have the latest one is Willionaire.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never released an album that was like a self-titled album. And I think this next project, I'm just going to declare it. It's going to be a self-titled project.
You heard it here.
It's going to be a self-titled because I feel that this is the perfect time for me to exploit that because quite honestly, I can't really go out and about and record with a whole bunch of my musician peers at
Yeah.
this moment. So I'm gonna go back to a process that I did um, on my very first album, which is the Sound Volume One that I referenced before.
Mm-hmm.
I basically did everything, with the exception of like a few special guests here and there, but I did everything. So this album is going to literally be me doing everything,
That's sweet.
and um, you know, it's it's a it's a humbling thing now because in some ways I've gotten spoiled by being able to just hit up a musician friend and be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, let's record some drums or let's record some guitar, let's record some horns." And you know, given the situation at hand, it's not so accessible to do that unless they're recording at home too, unless they're able to record and track at home. And unfortunately, a lot of musicians have not caught up to that process just yet. And it's not for me, it's not about finding a musician that can record at home, record the part. It's about I have a certain vision. I have
Yeah.
certain artists and certain people that I feel that if I can't have them, I will not use them. I will not use anyone else. So I'm very particular about it. But in regards to this upcoming project, I'm focusing solely on my own efforts because I wanted to represent the creativity of quarantine, of self isolation, and
Mhm.
basically being on an island, being able to build your own universe, kind of being a castaway in a proverbial sense. Like everybody in their own way is on their own island now.
Yeah.
And I want this project to represent everything that I've thought about or everything that I've experienced while on this island. So it's almost like I think that all albums to a degree are um, reflection pieces. They might
Yeah.
reflect some part of reality or perspective.
Or a
And I
snapshot in time. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that a lot of the material that I have on this new project is going to be more um more candid than I've ever been before
Mm.
in terms of life experiences, just my various I don't know, my various levels of self. Like everybody has these compartments of themselves that they don't always reveal to everybody. Like, you know,
Totally.
so I want the music to represent that. I
And
have some
go into those
serious.
places. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm working on this project, um, and it's kind of bittersweet because it's like I'm able to revisit a part of myself from the past while being in the future. It's
Yeah.
like if I could make the Sound Volume One over again with new music and new toys and new technology, how would I make it? I guess I will make it the way I'm making this new project.
It's
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
so yeah, that's the new project. I don't really know in terms of a timeline, But I will say that I work best when I'm able to sometimes put the carriage before the horse. So
Put it out there. Yeah.
yeah, sort of like realistic timeline in terms of completion. I really want this to be done before July 30th, which is my birthday. So
Sweet.
that's kind of how I did volume one. I did volume one. I was like, I want to complete this album before my birthday. And I started on July 1st
Declare it.
of 2004. And I finished that whole project before July 30th. So
There it is.
if we're in May and we get at least 2 months of solid quarantine across the board. I mean, discounting Los Angeles, which has 3. Um, you know, then I'll finish this project. It'll be
It's likely. It's likely.
yeah. So yeah, we might
Good.
all be at 3 months, but you know what? There's still hope for us because nobody's said 3 months definitively. So
Exactly. That's the hope slash anxiety, right? It's in the back of your head, like maybe me too. So,
exactly.
and they're all figuring it out as they go. We're building the ship while we're flying it. So
Yeah.
nobody knows. So, well, that's awesome, man. Well, I always like to wrap up with these last 2 questions before I point people to where they can find your stuff. So, you've already talked a lot about how important it is to be immersing in music and looking at the past, and then, how you teach and stuff like that. So, I just want you to break it down a little bit for the last 2 questions. I always love to ask how and why you inspire others to make more music.
The how I inspire has to do with putting out music and being productive and showing productivity.
Mm,
So nowadays, because we live in a high social media in just universe, you have to be able to put out some form of content. And now, it's not just about putting out an album, putting out a single. It's about posting videos, posting live stream so that people can see you perform live, or being able to keep people in the loop of things that are going to happen, such as the new album and yada yada yada. And
yeah.
and
So
a
they
lot
care
of
when it happens. Yeah.
yeah, so the inspiration for others is transmitted by action, by actually doing it. Um, and I look at my own work and go, wow, I can't believe in certain periods of my life I was able to get this done, because I might have been in a headspace or a life situation where I was like, I don't even know how I got that done because I was dealing with this and dealing with that. But you got to be able to start what you finish and be able to put your mind to a task and complete it. And that is my how. And in terms of like what I do, as a working musician, is well, not so much these days, but when I was working, um, um, even to this, even now, right? Even though we've been in quarantine for a few months, and even things have been sort of up in the air, we don't know how things are going to reopen or what the future is going to look like for the people at large. Is that um, I worked so much on so many different corners of my musicianship, of my artistry, um, that I inspire as well as I can, as best as I can, by being able to be flexible to various situations, being able to adapt, being able to
Mm,
bend in that break. And for a lot of up and coming musicians and artists, um, one of the things that I've noticed just being online, being across the platforms of all the social medias and seeing how they function, how they use their own social media, and how they just respond to um, I don't know, adversity or people not really jumping on their project as quick as they feel people should. They feel like I've got 17,000 followers. How come only 5 people bought the album? I've got
Mm,
20,000 followers. How come only 10 people showed up in my live stream? You know, and
yeah.
these are issues that are mm, relevant now more than ever before, but they've never been relevant to me because I mean, obviously, I come from, I'm thinking with a different helmet
Mm,
of my own experience in this matter. That like everything that is new today is old tomorrow. And
yeah.
one of the things that I try to do as best as I can is encourage artists and musicians to be very passionate and committed to their own agenda and not be subject to trying to chase a trend, trying
Mm,
to chase clout, or trying to be obsessed with fame and being revered. Like the funny thing is, like I think about my heroes or the people that I admire or I grew up listening to, or just public figures. Like you take a Muhammad Ali for instance, somebody like
yep.
that, or
Louisville.
yeah, like or even we talked about Queen. We talked about Queen, where all right, Freddie Mercury, and like
Yep.
obviously, his story is dramatically different than anybody's life. I mean, but
Yes.
I'm just saying, like there are so many things that I take away from his story, Muhammad Ali's story, even now the relevance of like the Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, like
Mm,
how Michael Jordan's ability, his his work ethic comes to the surface even more through this documentary than we already knew. Like we knew the dude was on a different level, but I draw my inspiration from these type of things across the board to
mm,
say, well, you know, there's a work ethic that you have to have. There's a mindset that you have to have
mhm.
where even if one day Instagram and Twitter and Facebook died, like if they went away, who would you be without it? Because there's too
Yeah.
many artists that are dependent on their analytics to be an artist. And this is coming from somebody who, when I did an EP that I dropped in 1999, and the only way that people knew about it was I had to go to people and be like, I got an EP.
Physically, yeah.
Physically, yes, like physically out, like literally out the trunk of the car and playing the music from the car or from a boom box. Like, yo, check it out. And and now I see younger artists just posting a bunch of SoundCloud clips, or there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying too, it's saturated. It's a lot happening out here. I mean, and the only way that I can inspire those people, those younger or even, fresh out the gate artists, is that I inspire them by saying, like, do what you feel in your heart you should do. Like, don't try to press the public so much for their validation, for their certification, because at the end of the day, um, we live in an age where your library of work is going to be the true mark of your influence. Like you
Mhm.
can't just put out a single. Now people do it. You can't just put out a single and be like, "Here's my single." You got to put out a lot of music. You got to put out a whole lot of music. You got to put out some stuff where you know you're generating as much music as you can possibly put out, as you can afford to put out, and it still be quality, it still be good, but you have to do it your own way. You have to stand out. You have to stand apart. It's too many artists that their photos look just like the mainstream photos, or their art looks like the mainstream art, or their sound is just like a mainstream sound. There's nothing wrong with that if they want that. My whole thing is, if you're trying to stand out, you're not going to stand out blending in with everybody else that's trying to blend in.
Yeah.
So that's my Kirkology.
There you go.
Like, I've always lived and abided by that. Every single album I've ever done, every single project I put out, it I've had issues with it being placed in record stores at the time when record stores were a thing. I had issues with it being played on radio because this song doesn't fit a format, or this album doesn't fit a format. My look doesn't fit a marketing format. It's always something. It's always something. And when it's said and done, if you stick to your guns and you do what you feel is valuable to you, you will always come out the winner, especially if you believe it, if you really are convicted by it. It can't just be, oh man, in my case, I was always put in like the neo soul category because I'm a black artist and I play and sing. And then people say, well, it's just like John Legend. It's just like, whatever, Stevie Wonder. And it's not just as simple as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's not how music works.
That's not how it works, for sure. And Duke Ellington, he said, there was a quote, basically I'm paraphrasing the quote, but he said, there's good music and there's bad music. Those are the only two types of music that exist.
That's good.
So, my heroes, those who I grew up listening to and inspired by, they had their own struggles to deal with, even though they're legends now, but they weren't legends at the time. Like the Thelonious Monk, that dude was so left to center compared to his contemporaries. People would laugh at him. They were, oh, this dude's a goofball. He doesn't play as elegant as maybe Errol Garner or maybe Bud Powell. Like he has a whole different
other people you don't remember because they stood in the crowd, right?
Yeah, they didn't. They're prominent in history, but they're not as impactful. Their impact was not as potent. Like, there's a whole Monk Institute now. A whole Thelonious Monk Institute exists. And it's funny because you listen to Thelonious Monk recordings, and if you're comparing it by way of Oscar Peterson and those guys, it's very different. It's very different, and there's enough. Everybody had their own style and identity in regards to how they performed and wrote and created their craft back in those days. So if you wanted to hear Horace Silver, you wanted to hear Miles Davis, for instance. Miles had his own thing versus Coltrane had his own thing, but you can appreciate them both for what they are. And it was all about getting your own thing, having your own identity, like standing away from people. And so I listened to all types of geeky music over the years, like, and I don't want to get too deep on the rabbit hole, but I would just say in terms of my influence, right? Like I'll go back to my album Legacy, where that whole album is all covers. It's all covers. I didn't write a single song on there. It's all paying homage to all the artists I listened to growing up. So I'm going from Donald Fagen of Steely Dan to Shaka Khan to the Yellow Jackets to Herbie Hancock, Duke Ellington, Swing Out Sister. Wanted to fit Jeff Lorber and Level 42 on the album, but I couldn't. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Pat Metheny, Yvonne Lenz, Lee Ritenour, Take Six, just to name a few. And those are all influences that I was able to fit on the album, and it's a double album. And people listen to that album and they go, "That's why I didn't understand your previous music,
There you go.
because I didn't know you were into Pat Metheny, and I didn't know you were into, Herbie Hancock or Dr. Billy Taylor, you know." And so the pigeonholing thing is such a crutch. So in terms of influence, and I am definitely going to wrap it up. In terms of influence, I want to continue to influence artists, young and old, or in between. That it's okay for them to be who they are and to put out what they believe is them, like truly them, and encourage them to aim to be as much of an individual as possible, because there's too many stampede artists out here that look the same, they dress the same, they sound the same. They even have the same philosophy. They say the same things. They use the same hashtags. Their Instagrams look the same. They look like somebody, but they also look like nobody. Everybody's got a nice, Mark Series Canon camera, and they take pictures, you know, on 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 cool, at cool scenes, or they go to, like, they use the same phrases, wheels up, when it's time to get on the airplane. They today's office, I'm at the office space, and it's this auditorium. It's like they use the same lingo. It's the same thing. The funny thing about social media that's been a blessing for me, the glass half full perspective, is that I've been able to see how everybody views themselves, not just how I view them. Like, it's not like I go to their page and they see, oh, they got 50,000 followers and they got these nice pictures, and I can look at it and go, this ain't real. I'm not saying that they are ultimately super fake. I'm just saying they are placating to what they think will grant them success, will grant them respect, will grant them opportunities to work at that level that they're trying to get at. When it's said and done, you're just another page with a bunch of numbers, and you have no identity. There's nothing. Like, I don't have a lot of followers by comparison to a lot of my peers, but I'm all about quality ultimately. So quality for me is more important. I don't need to try to clout chase or try to brand my page, my social medias, to appease these quote unquote fans, because I'm just not wired like that. I'm like, yo, this is my life. I put what I want on my life on my life wall, and this is what it is, and everything plays into itself. Everything is authentic. Everything is. I'm not out here, faking the funk. Basically, like, everything about me is what it is. Like, I'm not showcasing vehicles that I know I don't own. I'm not showcasing jewelry that I know I don't own. I'm not, and everybody's different. I know everybody's got a game that they have to run. They have an office they have to run, rather, because they have to do it for whatever reason they feel they have to do it. But for me personally, for William Kurk, I always preach individuality. Individuality is the source of being able to inspire and to keep yourself inspired. Because if you can't inspire yourself, you can't inspire nobody else outside of you. There's nobody will ever be important. Not to say that you should just only inspire yourself, but you got to start with yourself first, and then be at an optimal level of inspiring yourself to inspire others. That's what the last album, Willionaire, is about. Willionaire, for me, is about, this is who I am, and I'm a Willionaire. I'm rich in individuality and identity, and just my whole just flow of being who I am. Like, I don't need to be accredited by people in the streets or critics for me to be good. Like, I am who I
Yeah.
am, and I present it to you as it is. So that's how I inspire in a nutshell.
Hey, no, that's good. I think I'm hoping that there's like two responses right now. There's either people who are feeling real fired up or people that are feeling really exposed and hopefully in a good way, feeling like, man, what am I doing? Shaking up a little bit and show them like, hey, be you. I love that whole Willionaire album. I love the uniqueness and everything that you just show about, like you said, like, hey, it's just me. I'm just showing up here. So last thing I want to do is I want to get people to wax their surfboards for the World Wide Web and surf over to wherever you want people to find, your music, your social accounts. Where do you want people to find you?
Well, surf's up. The website, williamkurk.com, is the I would equate that to being like the base station for everything. That's like
Right.
the aircraft carrier command.
Sounds good.
So williamkurk.com, and then there's Instagram. Obviously, everybody's on Instagram these days. Instagram at William Kurk, Twitter at William Kurk, Snapchat. I'm on Snapchat at William Kurk. And then you notice a theme happening right here, right?
Simple enough,
there's,
right?
There's a TikTok. I'm on TikTok at William Kurk. And then YouTube. YouTube is definitely a very underspoken social media, but it's a social media. It's very relevant. So it's at William Kurk. And then, of course, these are some other popular social medias that I would encourage anybody to go to at any time. Just holler at me on Venmo at William Kurk, Cash App, $ William Kurk. I mean, look, you send me some dollars, I don't know. I'll send you something interesting. But since I don't have an OnlyFans just yet. That's the only place that
there you go.
I have to do a little research on how to make that work. But
we'll link your Venmo, and if you get any dollars, you have to let me know that we got you some dollars through the show.
Oh yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It rarely happens that way, but if so, hey, believe me, I got you.
Closed mouths don't get fed,
Yes, a true message. A true message.
All right. Well,
yes, that's one thing. That is one thing that I've learned a lot about the social media flow of recently in terms of connecting with the up and coming people, the generations. They have no shame of putting up their Venmo or their Cash App. And I'm just looking at it like, oh, why would they do that? But then now I'm like, you know what?
That is not so bad.
Not so bad now.
That's good.
So, like you said, closed mouths don't get fed. And, you have not because you spoke not.
There it is.
So there you go.
All right, William, this has been awesome. I'm excited to send people over to all the enterprises, all the stuff that you do. And if people haven't already, they need to go check out your website, the Synth Sounds of videos, and send you a couple dollars on Venmo. We'll do it like that, huh?
I tell you what, I'll make a special shout out for anybody that even peeps this. You send some on Cash App or Venmo, I'll just send you whatever album you want. There you go.
That's awesome.
It's an exclusive. Cool. Nobody else will ever get that deal.
Bum. All right, bro. Well, awesome. This has been a great chat. For William and Chris, everybody remember, give more grace, share more love, and make more music. Boom. All right. I hope you enjoyed that chat with William. And if you did, you can show your love with a thumbs up and a subscribe on YouTube. Because remember, you can watch us all on YouTube, or a rating and a review in your podcast player. As always, you can connect with us on Instagram at make.more.music, or send me a DM or an email if you would like to get in touch. And ultimately, you can check all of William's music out. I put links in the show notes for his Bandcamp and YouTube channel and stuff like that. So support him, watch all those Reverb Synth Sounds video, and enjoy another new music shout out to end our day. Let's get into it. New music shout out. Today's new music shout out comes from one of our listeners who is a singer-songwriter out of Peterborough, Ontario, Pat Rees. He's currently working on his first album. He's getting ready to release that and a studio single, By My Side, coming in July. But I touched base with him and I was like, hey, do you have something you can send me? So he said the majority of his music is country, indie, pop roots, attempting to be catchy songs that induce emotion in listeners without shying away from sensitive topics. So recently he took a step back from his current projects to write this acoustic single called Monday Morning, hoping it'll help you listeners stay positive in all the difficult times that are going on right now. So check out his music. Links are in the show notes or in the description below on YouTube. And without further ado, here is our new music shout out of Monday Morning by Pat Rees.
Like you're surrounded by your doubts. Don't be stressing now, the hurt's out. And no more sweating now, the work's done. Lean back your seat, crack a cold one. We worked all week, it's time to have some fun. No more sweating now, the work's done. Oh, I know that it's only a couple days, all I need to give my mind a break, take the pain away. So why don't you get in your truck, drive to the closest sunny spot and turn it up. It's a little trip away on a too late. If you're anything like me, I bet it's calling your name. Don't call me, you won't find me till Monday morning, till Monday. Don't call me, you won't find me till Monday morning, till Monday morning. And see, I'd love it if you felt like joining me, but regardless, I gotta get out of here or I'm gonna scream. Put my phone away, give my mind a break. At night I'll call all my buddies.